Можемо починати.
Добрий день.
Good day, everyone who has joined us today. So, good day. You don't have to answer to me, in fact. Moreover, I would ask you to mute your microphones, in fact, during the event of ours, the opening event. Otherwise, we'll just have lots of noise here. So, in the end, we'll have a special session of Q&A, and then you'll be able to pose any questions. I can see that not everyone is still here who has been registered. Still, I hope that these people will be joining soon and will watch our event of the opening as well. My name is Alexander Kleimanov. I'm the head of the Department of Socially Significant Content in the project of Transformation Communications. This is the project of the United States Agency of International Development, USAID. We are conducting the grant competition on a regular basis. Now it has the name of PITCHUA Plus. So today we are conducting this event, which is the opening of its another iteration. I welcome all of you, and I hope that as the outcome of this competition will get lots of interesting applications and viewers both in Ukraine and abroad who will see eventually very important and significant content about Ukraine and will get to know something new and important, and they will start important discussions between themselves. So before we move to the main part, I would like to move to our first slide. First of all, I'd like to drive your attention to the following, that in case if we hear air raid alert in Kyiv, we'll take a 5-minute break so as each of you would be able to move to a safe space, to a safe place, and then we will go on. If you're watching us not from Kyiv and you will hear air raid alert when we don't have it, please act whatever you consider to be appropriate. If you need to move anywhere, please move, even if you need to turn off our broadcast. Live broadcast. Our today's meeting is being recorded, and then we will publish the recording of this event at our YouTube channel of PITCHUA. And if you don't watch it till the end today, or you would like to watch it again, if you are not able to join us, or you will even read about this competition later, these people will be able to watch this event and Q&A session recorded at the YouTube channel. So don't worry if you suddenly need to disconnect because of security reasons. All of the questions which will emerge in the process of our presentation being delivered, please write them down into the chat. Exactly into the chat, because we have one more option of Q&A, but we'd like to have the questions in one and the only space, the chat, so it's easier to answer them. So please find chat in the bottom panel of your screen, and then during the presentation you'll be able to write down the questions. We'll come back to them later in the end of the session. During the presentation, we won't answer any questions during the presentation. We have interpretation in English, in fact. So please, if we are watched by English-speaking viewers, please use this option. You're able to press the button of interpretation. And after that, we'll also publish the recording of this event in English interpretation in YouTube, so you will be able to watch it in 2 languages. Okay, I guess that now we can move to the main part of our today's event. And let me say again that the organizers of the competition PITCHUA Plus is the Project Transformation Communications Activity, TCA. That is the project of the United States Agency on International Development, USAID. The competition of PITCHUA Plus is taking place in partnership with the Ministry of Culture and Information Policy of Ukraine, and we are immensely grateful to our partners for that. Let's move on. When you take part in any grant competition, which is being announced by some foundation or any other organization, it's important to understand what this organization is dealing with, and it will help you to create your application in the best way possible, because every international organization which announces grant competitions for the creation, support, and funding of the content, it always has certain objectives. And these kinds of competitions are still embedded into the objective or goal of this organization, so as you could better prepare the application for PITCHUA Plus, which is organized by TCA, the project of USAID. We'll tell a couple of words what TCA is, and then you will see the presentation video with the greeting from the head of the USAID mission in Ukraine. So, the TCA project has three components. Our project is providing research. We are organizing and developing communication campaigns for the support of reforms which are being implemented by the Ukrainian government, for instance. And the third part of our activity is the support and creation of the socially significant content, so as we could bring the message to the audience in the efficient way about the positive changes which are taking place in Ukraine, and to raise the important socially significant problems, issues, and discussions around them which are relevant for the Ukrainian society. Within this third sphere, we conduct the competition of PITCHUA Plus, and also within the same part, we are conducting the events of the educational platform of PITCHUA. The video recordings of these events can be found at our YouTube channel. If you are in YouTube and you can Google that PITCHUA, you will instantly find us. In the end of the presentation, we'll provide you with certain specific links, and you will find recordings of many interesting meetings which you should see, so as you could prepare the application in the best way possible. Let's move on. Every competition of PITCHUA Plus, if you took part in them before, have their own certain direction. This iteration of the competition, which we announced as the call for actions on the 1st of May, is devoted to the projects which are searching for support for implementation of post-production, and also documentary projects which have been done in the full cycle, from the development till the finalization and publication of the project. These two bigger categories will be considered in this iteration of the competition. So please read carefully, read the rules carefully. And I would say that if you joined us, you've read the announcement about the competition, maybe you read the email or at the page of Detector Media, where we posted the rules in the document which has the name of RFA, Request for Applications. It describes all the categories. If you have any questions which you do not hear answers for today, then you should look through this document, because whatever is needed for you to submit an application is written there. And even today, during the Q&A session, we will also often refer you to this document. So please, I recommend you read it carefully from A to Z and take into consideration whatever is written there. All of that is so important for the successful submission of the application for PITCHUA Plus. Let's move on. As I already mentioned, now we will show you the presentation video with the introduction speech from the head of USAID mission in Ukraine and you will also see which projects have been already implemented under the patronage or as an outcome of the competition PITCHUA+. Let's watch the video.
Creative sector reinforces national identity and culture. It amplifies Ukrainian voices and spurs important conversations in a compelling format. Entertainment content conveys powerful Ukrainian stories that expose new perspectives, foster greater understanding, inspire, and unite. The USAID Transformation Communications Activity is a 6-year, $45 million initiative that utilizes innovative, data-driven communications to strengthen Ukraine's democratic resilience. Through TCA, USAID supports the production of Ukrainian social impact content using an innovative grant competition called PITCHUA. Why? Because stories provoke dialogue.
International consultants work with PITCHUA winners so that their films, TV shows, and online content use best practices in entertainment to bring important messages to viewers.
Bottom shows how easy it is to manipulate people with disinformation. We also show how it can be stopped.
Ukrainian policies are a symbol of Ukraine as a part of European culture. They show that we have a past that must be learned from as we build our future.
In our comedy series, we had a university student witness elections in a village and shows all the villagers that European standards pave the way to a better life.
Those Who Stayed is a show about the first days of the war, and it shows viewers around the world how much war turned everyone's life upside down, and yet how much they have in common with Ukrainians.
Working with Ukrainian teams is a very special experience. Even if every story isn't directly about the war is a part of every story now, and PITCHUA opens up these stories to the world.
Our YouTube project On the First Line is about volunteers, doctors, innovators whose small victories move Ukraine forward, because it's important to see the perspective, the light at the end of the tunnel.
USAID is proud to partner with Ukrainian content creators to drive conversations about socially relevant issues through world-class entertainment. This dialogue ultimately strengthens Ukraine's democratic resilience.
I hope that you saw the subtitles with the Ukrainian translation below. It seems to me you should open the full screen to understand it if you did not understand the English language, what we were telling about. But still, I hope that this video has given you some inspiration and explained to you why we are so proud of our support of these projects and which projects exactly we are expecting to support in the future. The ones which will be watched by many people and the ones which will make Ukrainian audience and the audiences from abroad to discussions. They provoke for discussions important for the society and the issues of them. The competition of PITCHUA+, let me tell you again, is the competition of the socially significant content. It's important to pay attention to that when you prepare your application. Please do not forget about that this is the competition of the socially significant content. It's not the competition of festival content or auteur content. It is the competition of the socially significant content, and which that is the main criterion which will be used to assess the applications when we decide whether they are really compliant with other criteria and eligibility conditions. What is socially significant or relevant content? How we understand it in TSCA. This is the content which highlights issues that are relevant for society. It encourages discussion and debate around these issues. It allows you to better understand society. And later on, we'll explain a bit what you need to pay attention to and which questions you should pose to yourselves when you prepare your application so as you could make it in the best way possible. Where do we take this money from, which are used as the grants and awarded to the winners of the competition PITCHUA+? The grants within the competition are American taxpayers' money. The money's administrator is USAID, the United States Agency on International Development, and USAID sets the requirements and rules for this money use. Please do not forget about that. This is not the money from the Ukrainian budget. This is not a gift. This is the money which has some source of origin, and this source of origin is American taxpayers, which set certain requirements and rules how this money should be used. And these requirements and rules are explained in the document of RFA, which I again appeal you to read thoroughly. The content created with the grant support should strengthen positive attitudes and public recognition of diversity and unity in Ukraine and raise awareness of the positive trends and results that have been made possible by systemic democratic change in Ukraine. This is what's written in the rules of the competition of PITCHUA+. This is the reason why this competition is taking place, why USAID decided to fund it. That is why please do not forget about this positive mood of the content which you are planning to create thanks to the grant support. Please do not forget, remember this main important objective of the competition. Let's move on. I will answer one of the questions instantly, because I know that it always appears, especially among those who have never taken part in PITCHUA competition before. All the rights to the content created are reserved by the manufacturer. USAID and TCA in particular can use short excerpts for presentation purposes. So when you are creating the scripts, they are still in your ownership. And when you're making a video, this video is your own as well. When you create the final product, it is in your ownership as well. If, because of any reasons, the grant is being suspended or in the middle of the process after the script is written, but because of some of the reasons there was a decision not to go on with the grant procedure, still the rights for the script belong to you. USAID still has the right only to use short excerpts to create some presentation videos which you have just seen before. Let's move on. So, and now a bit more details about two categories, according to which, in this iteration, we'll have the submission of applications, that is, post-production and documentary projects in full cycle of the production. And let me instantly mention that the applicant can submit up to 2 applications in each category, but can receive no more than 1 grant in each category. That is, if you are a big company which has already 2 projects and production of those projects is ongoing, and you need funding of post-production, you can submit the application for 2 projects like these, and simultaneously you can submit the applications, 2 applications for the documentary projects in full cycle, but in the end you will get only 1 grant, not more than 1 grant in each of the categories. Before that, in a previous iteration, we had a bit of different rules. That is why I wanted to instantly mention that, because this is the certain change of the rules. So please pay attention to that as well. Let's move on. The question which always worries everybody is how much money you can get, obviously. First, let us look in more details of the category of post-production. In this category, you can get the grant up to $75,000. What should be the status of the project which has been submitted for the grant support? The project should now be in production, and its post-production may require full or pre-funding or additional funding. This project shouldn't have any other grants from USAID. So if you are taking this project, which you submit for post-production, and you got already the grant, for instance, for the development of the script or for the shooting period, then this project cannot claim the post-production support in this category. It will not be submitted for consideration. This project may have the funding from other international organizations, but not from USAID. The grant from USAID can be only one and only. If you get it, it's for the support of post-production.
It is a very important grant from TCA that should be the crowning necessary funds to complete this project. That is, if you still need some additional funding to complete your post-production together with this application, you have to confirm that you have some arrangements for this funding. This cannot be so that you win and PITCHUA and get the grant, but it is not enough to complete your project. So this is up to $75,000 for post-production should be the completing part or installment. It is necessary to conclude it by April 2025. Your project should be edited by that time. We can see that this is not the final cut, but almost there. And that should be the stage of finalization by April 2025. And this is a very important requirement in its own right. If you are sure that you cannot conclude by that time, then we cannot, on our part, review such an application. As to the format, this should be a length starting from 40 minutes, cannot be a short film. They are not lead eligible. We can have full-length feature, drama series, documentaries, also series and animation in the same way. Now we can switch to our next slide. Documentaries, full cycle of production. There you can get a grant up to $100,000 for complete production of this documentary. And what should be the status of your project by the time you apply? Beginning development, beginning of production. It can require additional funding and also have no other grants from USAID. And this is the last, should be the last installments necessary to conclude the project. You can have other projects or other partners, with co-funding offered, but we cannot do it in such a way that you apply for the USA grant and then you look for some additional funds. All the money, with the only exception of this amount of the grant, should be in place. That should be the last part. And you can conclude your project by April 2025. That can be over 40 minutes. Also, we cannot accept any applications for full-length, short films, For the new season, you cannot apply for the project already funded previously with a USAID grant. If you created earlier and concluded some project funded with the USAID grant, while with the documentaries, films, there is no second season, but if it is a series, we can imagine another cycle, funded with another subject matter, so that can be done. That can be concluded as the finalized project. If you participated in the previous competitions of PITCHUA, you should know that always we offer some subject matter, and that's how we review different applications under the category. This year we have a format instead of a topic, this post-production plus documentaries instead of specific subject matters. This year we call them TCA, our grant narratives, and those are narratives which for us are important to be implemented in the communication campaigns that we develop. And those narratives are the ones that we would like to intertwine into with the pitched project. This is national unity, war, post-war recovery and reintegration. This is quite broad, as you can see, in 2 or 3 words. You cannot explain the essence of it, but in RSA document it's all explained, I promise. So I'm referring you to it so that you can read what is meant by the narratives in question. And here I would like to say that it is not that your project should be about national unity, it should be about your topic, about your problem, the one you choose. But if you deal with the national unity in some way or have a discussion on the head, that is implementation of the narrative in question of your project. The same is true with the war and post-war recovery. You can see that any project now has to do with the war. So we are not telling you this is about PITCHUA Plus, because this is by definition the subject matter of the topic for many projects to come. But what is important here is that against this backdrop, we have to look into some socially important issues. This should not be just a project about a war, the war. It shouldn't be just about some weapon systems being used by the armed forces of Ukraine. This can be a project where, against the backdrop of the war, you look into some social important problems. The same is true with reintegration. In RSA, you have the detailed explanation of that. I'm offering you some specific examples of the topics that you can explore under the narratives. And that is, again, not a complete list of possible topics, and that is something that you can formulate in your project accordingly. Next slide, please. So I have already mentioned things that we have here. For example, the topics we can imagine: resilience of Ukrainians, narratives on peaceful civilians or dwellers whose life was turned upside down by the war, people with disability, ethnic, LGBTQ plus, internally displaced as vulnerable communities, combating stereotypes, and the Ukrainian culture uniting people, documenting war crimes, war impact on mental health, the sources of resilience, horizontal links, thanks to which Ukrainian society demonstrated its strength. Next slide. The European values tested by the war, the rectifying the distorted notions. What makes Ukraine different from the Russian universe, combating Russian propaganda and false narratives on Ukraine and about Ukrainians. The consequences of ignoring the threats of the Russian universe to the world, and responsibility of individuals. Freedom, democracy, not a given thing, that free choice. So Ukraine is sharing their resilience with the world. You can see the array, inexhaustible bunch of topics. So it's up to you now. And we decided this time to give you, as content creators, as much freedom of choice as possible in formulating the topic, and we decided just to confine this to the grand narratives for you to see the basic lines of thought you can follow. Next slide, please. And here I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Olga Mikhailchenko, and she'll discuss the evaluation criteria for the concepts under the two categories. Good afternoon. Thank you, Alexander. And let me discuss the first stage of evaluation. When you supply your applications, we have two stages. The first stage is to put together a short list. The first criterion is relevance and potential impact. We will weigh your concept in general and also in the way how it represents the social impact topic. It should have proper potential to engage the audiences in discussion, dialogue events for discussion of the content, or local screening sessions with the directors and producers, Q&A sessions. And would mean that if you engage some governmental entities, NGOs, society organizations, discussion groups around your contents, the novelty and potential influence is very important for evaluation. Another thing is distribution plan and coverage. You should demonstrate your target audience and the strategy to cover it. Principally, those are viewers in Ukraine, but that can be potential of interest to the international audiences. Every application should have the broadest coverage imaginable possible. And then we'll have the opportunity for the applicant and the team to successfully implement the project request, and then funding. The factors: duration of the project, its life cycle, its target audience, realistic conclusion terms, and the budget. And also have gender equity, social inclusion. And in your proposals, you have to pay attention to gender equity, social inclusion for the groups like women, girls, people with disabilities, amputees, LGBTQ+, national minorities, people with international challenges, people victims of sexual violence, survivors of sexual violence, conflict-related, gender-based violence. So now we will look into the script, the video, the rough cut, and with as to how you convey or can convey the message in question. Well, now our competition has certain limitations as to the contents that can be applied, and let's discuss this in particular. So the content could not contain any drug taking or alcohol or smoking. If you have that in your footage already, you should not be use any glorification, and no swearing, no offensive language, and the content should not contain characters, dialects, or scenes that reflect stereotypes of racial, ethnic, or sexual orientation bias. If you want to destroy a stereotype, you have to be delicate about that. Content should not contain any excessive violence, bloodshed, and use of weapons should be strictly limited. In depiction, no nudity, no sexual scenes, birth control and abortion should not have objectivized image of women. If you are highlighting some problems, the content should not focus on the negative side of it only, but also provide some solutions to the attempt to provide. It shouldn't glorify or advertise any company, organization. If you're supported by some organization, you should share the contents with us for the ad integration so that we can arrange for it. So freedom of faith. The content should not demonstrate advantage of any or bias for any political party, law enforcement, or religious organization. Shouldn't be used for fundraising for the army or law enforcement. If you have some military engaged as your actors or law enforcement people, we cannot pay for their work. If it should not be used for donations to the armed forces, and there should not be a request for any donations or recruitment for your content. And if you already have in your scenario any kind of limitation, you should point it out for us. And if you claim USAID funding, you should be ready for your content, your script to be in line with our requirements. We should remove things that are in the way and not in consistency with our requirements. Next slide, please. And there are certain issues that you have to take care of before you apply for post-production or document. So the first and the most important is you have to think whether your project is really socially important and why you should use 1 hour of it. Somebody should dedicate an hour of work. Why should they view the second, the third episodes? What will interest your viewers in that project? And you should revisit our essay and make sure that it's topical, and to change after the viewing. The attitude should be changed toward certain problems. And secondly, what people will try to discuss after that, whether your project will provoke any discussion on the resources available, the people, funding, and enough time to conclude it by May 2025, the distribution strategy for the big audience to be one by 2025. Post-production applications, you have to think about potential problems related to your relations with the partners. If it's a post-production, you should look for any conflict of interest with the funding coming from other international organizations, for example, in USAID, and whether there is anything that can be limited and constrained by the USAID, you have to change it if you want to supply for post-production funding.
As for the documentary, it's important to answer the following questions. What will be the new that the project can tell the audience? Hasn't the same thing been told by someone else? Isn't my concept a long news report? And if it's you would like to look at the educational platform of PITCHUA, we had a workshop with our experts, the British documentarists, which showed the difference between the long news report and the documentary project. So I advise you to watch this workshop so as you could understand what we mean when we say documentary project. If you'd like to create a portrait story, please think what kind of discussion will it give the audience. It cannot be just a story about, for instance, the doctors or paramedics or sappers. There should be something very specific, some specific problematics, which you would like to change the audience's attitude to. Can you tell a story in a visually interesting way? Is there enough time for development of the project, for the shooting period, and for post-production? Next slide, please. So, let me emphasize again, we have two stages of the competition. The first one is when you're sending the application in an online form. We are assessing, evaluating the concepts and determine a shortlist based on the evaluation criteria. Then TCA organizes a Q&A session with international experts. And the shortlisted applicants must participate in TCA's Gender Equality and Social Inclusion workshop. But if you have participated in some such training, you shouldn't take part in that again. And the selection committee will evaluate the applications and select the winners in the beginning of July. Next slide, please. How do you apply? So, you need to read the RFA very carefully, as well as the application form without filling it in. Just read it. Look which materials you may need. Maybe you can need the script, the outlines, on the CV in English. So you should have everything ready. You need to record a video pitch. As an online application, we have a certain criterion which you need to follow to record a video pitch. You need to prepare a presentation up to 5 slides for your project. After everything is ready, all the materials are ready, the video, the presentation, up to 5 slides, then you fill out the application online. And do not forget to do that by the 31st of May, because the 31st of May is the last day when you can send the application. So you can apply through the form, via the form on Detector Media. There is a chapter at this website which is devoted to TCA. It has, in fact, the name TCA PITCHUA Plus something. The competition is open till the 31st of May. It's a little banner if you look at the website of Detector Media. And also you may see on the screen the QR code, which will lead you to RFA document. And in the RFA document, you can have the links to the Google Forms of the online application, so you can save it if it is more convenient to you. Next slide, please. And I'm giving the floor to my colleague, Tatiana Kiselchuk. Hello, dear colleagues. Let us go on with our presentation. Criteria for evaluating shortlisted candidates. They are similar to the criteria which were just described by Olga for all of the applicants, but they are a bit simplified. They are not that numerous, and you'll get more points. So, relevance, novelty, and potential impact. Here again, we need the potential to provoke debate. This is why we are all of three of us drive your attention to that, because you need to create a special content. You need to have an interesting plot, but besides that, there should be some story there which will make... Well, okay, let's take an example. The people who have negative attitude towards LGBTQ plus people, can your content change this attitude? Of course, this is the super task, and the content will not just change the attitude, but can you raise a discussion after they watch this type of content? If you understand this example, okay. If you don't, we can discuss that after the presentation. You can ask about that as well. Target audience distribution plan. I guess it will not lead to any questions. The previous co-experience and team will be assessed, and for the post-production projects, the quality of the footage already created, or the ready-made as well. Okay, the next slide, please. Our timeline. The 1st of May was when we announced the competition. Up to the 16th of May, you can send any of the questions to our email. Maybe you forget them to pose today. Till the 16th of May, not later. On the 31st of May, we have the last day for applications. At 12, we will just stop taking applications. On the 21st of June, we'll announce the shortlist. And after that, on the 1st and the 2nd of July, we'll have the possible Q&A and A sessions with shortlisted participants. And in the first half of July, approximately till the 15th of July, we'll announce the winners. Next slide, please. This is the email which you can use. You can find it at Detector Media website as well. You can send any questions there which you are interested in. Please be free to send any questions. Next slide, please. Who will determine the winners? The selection commission, among the participants of which will have Izzy Charman, who is the British documentary filmmaker, the BAFTA winner, the Hollywood producers Adam Siegel and Josh Weinstock, and also the British producers Dan Berkridge and Paul Copeland. The next slide, please. In the same way, with these consultants, which are, by the way, the permanent consultants of TCA, in case if you win, you will work during the whole period of time. So please be ready for criticism, for common work. It is not just the format. Well, this is the format where you collaborate with the producers directly. They are reading everything. They're reading your scripts. They're reading your outlines. They are adjusting them together with you. They're thinking on the motivation of the characters and the plot lines, on the dramaturgy. And in the same way, they will lead you through the production and post-production periods. Next slide, please. So, in fact, Olga has already mentioned a workshop of our two consultants, Paul Copeland and Izzy Charman. I'm also recommending you to watch it. And please visit the platform of PITCHUA, because you will find lots of materials about our previous competitions. In fact, they may help you to think over your application, which you'll submit this time. Next slide, please. All the materials are published at Detector Media website in our chapter TCA. You'll have the information on shortlist there and any other information which will be affiliated with our competition. Next slide, please. And now I'm giving the floor to our colleague Maria Ishchenko, who is the grant manager, and she will explain the administrative issues in much better way. Hello. Our grant department of TCA will communicate with you and answer your questions, will promote your applications, and will also make you aware about the results of the selection. So, I will not take much time. I will tell about the most important details. As for the administrative part, first and foremost, in RFA, we have a specifically mentioned type of legal entities who can submit applications. Please pay attention to that as well. Those are limited liability companies, joint stock companies, so non-governmental organizations. There is the exhaustive list of legal entities there, but separately I'd like to drive your attention to private entrepreneurs. During all of our previous competitions, we allowed private entrepreneurs to submit application, including this one. However, if you are a private entrepreneur, it's important to show that you're just not one person who is working on the project, that you are a team. Including, separately, I'd like to drive your attention to the account that you need to take into account additional taxation, which can be led by the grant for the sole proprietors. Just recently, we looked at the taxation explanation policy. What the grants for the entrepreneurs should be considered. They are as revenue, considered as revenue. That's why there will be additional taxation. We can send you the link to this explanation after our meeting, whoever has been registered. But please pay attention to the fact that additional taxation, if the grant for the sole proprietors will lead to additional taxes, unfortunately, we will not be able to fund them or reimburse these additional taxes. So, please pay attention to that so as you did not get any additional complications or financial issues, so as it does not impact later on onto the quality of the product. And a separate point, individuals are not eligible to apply under this RFA because we will not be able to provide the necessary documents, the contract with the private person, with the individual. So it is the exclusion, the only exclusion for this competition. Also, RFI specifically mentions what is prohibited from budgeting in your project. This is construction, parties, celebrations, or hospitality expenses, procurement of agricultural goods, vehicles, a certain type of telecommunications equipment, and the list of the companies the equipment of which producers cannot be acquired. This list is also mentioned in the RFI, alcoholic beverages, and also procurement of goods or services that are restricted or prohibited under applicable USAID source national regulations, including Cuba, Iran, North Korea, and Syria. Next slide, please. You also cannot procure military equipment, surveillance equipment, goods for police or other law enforcement purposes, as some of the applicants can be involved as the characters or the actors, like the military, the servicemen, or the law enforcement employees. We need to tell them that they cannot get funding, that is fee, for their work from the money of this grant. If you have active military, servicemen, or law enforcement authorities involved in your project, they can get payment from other sources, from the third party. But as for the grant money, they cannot get any fees from that. And also a very frequent question, and the problem which we face, we cannot reimburse the expenses which have already been carried out. If we haven't signed the grant contract, but you've already started certain works which will be accomplished within this grant contract, unfortunately, we will not be able to transfer this money. So please pay attention to that when you plan the project, the involvement of the money, which money can be used from the third party, or which money will be needed to be attracted from TCA grant. And also, as I mentioned separately, any of the previous liabilities and or bad debts, penalties and or fines, creation of donation funds. If you have certain, for instance, expenses for the creation of the campaign to attract money, unfortunately, we cannot fund that as well. And altogether other expenses that are not allowable under our regulations. So at a certain stage, when the winners are selected, the grant team will communicate with the winners and will consider their budget separately and reconsider it. If there are any remarks or expenses which are not substantiated, not explained, or not compliant with the purposes of the grant, they will be also separately considered, and we will not reimburse them according to the decision of TCA. Next slide, please. Separately, I'd like to mention the issue in the application for the post-production and for the documentary projects about the budget. At the stage of the concept application, when you submit the application, we do not claim for the detailed budget. What you acquire, in what numbers, any detalization, and the equipment, and so on. Now, we just need the list, the overall groups of budget provisions which you'll consider within your project. That is personnel, transportation, equipment rental, location rental, and so on. This is just an example. You can have transportation but without personnel. Or maybe you don't have equipment instead of personnel. So this is just an example of how we'd like to see the distribution of your budget provisions or expenses provisions in the table. Detailed budget will be taken from the winner. So now we don't want to, in fact, load you with any additional documents, not to waste your time. At this stage, we ask you to do only it in this way. Next slide, please. And also, I'd like to tell you how the whole grant agreement will look like in TCA. It is a bit different type of grant agreement in comparison with other grantors. What's the difference? Every grant agreement will be divided into certain stages or blocks, I would even say. So, for instance, this is the visualized example on the slide. So the grantee is developing the outlines of the project, provides the report, and then will get the first payment. Then the second stage, scenarios or the scripts, then you get the second payment, and so on. So we have the post-payment. After you report about the first stage, about certain products to us, and these products will be defined with each grantee separately, what those results should be. So after each of the stages, you'll get the payment. So the payment is conducted for the accomplished work. TCA does not require financial statements or other financial supporting documents. That is, agreements, contracts, banking receipts, accounts, and so on. We do not need this kind of information because in the beginning, we will communicate with the winners, we'll check their budget, we'll distribute it into stages. So we understand that according to the certain budget procedure, the grantee will get this project, and these documents, financial statements, will not be required. What we claim is only the product you developed. The results by stages are presented in two languages, English and Ukrainian. The final product, the outlines, the scripts. For instance, if it is the film, you need subtitles. Why? Well, because we have the experts involved who will work with you, with each grantee. So they don't know Ukrainian. So you will need to provide them with this information. Besides that, the main final products which you'll develop is the script or the final cut will be approved by USAID. That is why you need two languages, English and Ukrainian. So when you plan the budget of your project, please take into consideration that in fact at each of the stages you will need to involve the services of the translators or interpreters, so as those final products from Ukrainian to English were translated. So please take that into consideration in your budget. Thank you. That's it from me. Okay, let me come back to you now. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you, Olga. If we are now speaking already about English, I would like to remind you that, in fact, all of the documents which you submit during the work with us should be submitted in two languages, English and Ukrainian. So please be ready for that. About the scripts and the scenarios, considering that those are rather long documents, if those are not final documents which will be then published, but working interim ones, in fact, our experts got used to work with the partners from Ukraine. And they got used even to work with Google Translate.
And they do not insist for it to be a professional translation, can be Google or the Google one, but edited to avoid any kind of nonsense. So now we can do without a professional translator to translate it verbatim. Some things can be Google translated or with some other software, but somebody has to edit it after that and remove the obvious inconsistencies with the original. And that should be corrected before you apply. But you should be ready for it to be supplied bilingually all the time, because TC is a USAID project. Our doctors, our script doctors are British and American, so this is not a whim of some kind. This is a necessity. They should be able to read it somehow, and all the final scripts that will be supplied and archived in the US for the purposes of audit, possible audit. So you should not forget about this particular requirement about the two languages. Well, that's basically it. We are done with the presentation, and now we can switch to the Q&A session. And there are some questions are in the chat box already, and we have omitted some things that will be in the RSA. This thing, TC are looking for the projects not just to urge people to discuss, but also the people who can do physical discussions, offline discussions. If you develop a documentary, when it is produced, you should be ready to arrange for some panel discussions, roundtables, presentations, the spirit of your film, rallies, perhaps, through the towns and cities of Ukraine for the people to get together and discuss things that you reflected in your content. And this is not just about the documentaries and also series and dramas. That is always interesting. People express their opinions, they fertilize and cross-fertilize each other with their ideas and opinions. thus offered. So I'm calling upon you. Please think about what people will be inspired to say or admit after having seen your product. Now I have to discuss it because this is a game changer. And we are looking for some project of that type, provoking discussions, which make people want to share. And you should be really ready to say whether your project can inspire the viewership. To have our private or friendly discussions with a warm circle wider. Now let's try to answer the questions already in the chat. While the recording of this event will be made available on PITCHUA YouTube channel. We have already collected workshops from the previous competitions where our script doctors and consultants tell you how to make better applications, and you are encouraged and advised to look through that. Yes, we never share presentations, but maybe we can make an exception for this time. I'm not making any promises that the recording now will be on YouTube, so with the presentation, of course. Whether it will be able to offer a documentary series as a sequel to something that was produced but funded by somebody else. All sequels, I have no objections. If you look for the information in RSA, you can make sure that this is so. There are no limitations to it. Now, what should be the length of every episode? We went to RSA, it's just the minimum for the whole product, not less than 40 minutes, but otherwise, no limitations for every episode. There's just the minimum length that is requested to be not shorter than 40 minutes, because we do not deal this time with the short films. I can explain why, because short films have difficulties with distribution. It's usually a festival format, but no, for broader audience it is impossible. For a TC and communication project, it is very important for the content to reach out to a broader audience. There are two questions to that effect. So the audience that you plan for the first month after the content publication, this is the very time you will need to conclude the grant. And about the audience, there is a broader timeline. What kind of audience you expect to have for the first year after the publication. So those figures are important and should be realistic. And we have some understanding about the audiences mobilized by Ukrainian distribution, TV and other channels. We understand that YouTube views are different from the number of viewership on TV and tickets sold for the films. Sometimes we'll say 20 million. We'll view that by the end of the year when the biggest blockbuster Navka after 1 year had not 25 million. It was a different, very different figure. So be realistic, please. And again, I would like to repeat that if you want to create some auteur kind of film or festival and art house kind of thing, we are very much in favor of maintaining and sustaining of this kind of oeuvre for the audiovisual content creation, but our grants for TCA are for the biggest audiences to be covered with the content you develop. And if you have no such plans and do not know how to do that, and you understand that this is not for the big audience, it will be just viewed by a couple of thousands of people, that kind of request cannot succeed even with the rest of formal requirements being satisfied. Think about the best or a better way to cover your broader audiences with such content. Now, a script for a documentary or series should be also supplied in English. All the documents should be bilingual because our international experts will be reviewing that, and that's the language they use. They cannot do it with the Ukrainian version in any possible way, but you can cut on the cost using Google Translate, and after that you should just carefully review and edit to avoid any kind of nonsense. Whether utilities can participate. Maria, no. No, utilities cannot participate. The legal entities that can participate are all mentioned in the RSA. Review that list carefully. Thank you, Maria. So, the RFA is now all complete with the information. If it's something else, then the RFA checklist, try to work your way out of it. Translation of the text or the voiceover. The voiceover should not be translated, and for the final content we'll do some dubbing for it. But if you think that international distribution of your documentary is very important, then you can include the budget and dubbing or doing or subtitles at least. But for the USAID, it is enough that you provide the subtitles, and the text should be just translated regularly. How many projects will you support? I cannot tell you because they are different budgets, and there are interesting projects, and they will be supported. We'll try to support as much as we can. It should be unique, it should be new, and it shouldn't repeat any universal truth told before you. Sometimes maybe a problem that is swept under the carpet, unusual angle you offer. Whether you can inspire any interesting discussions matters much more. Don't think about the number of grants. Won't be even a dozen, we will have more. So you can try your luck. This time the procedure of selection is streamlined. everything for the applicants. So the procedure is very simplistic. We do not request any budgets in much detail. It's not difficult. If you think that your project is worth getting a grant, don't think about the number of grants that we have in store. Now, for the projects in post-production category, what additional projects the footage reader faker has all the answers and how it should be delivered or provided together with the application. You should provide your presentation in 5 slides. And you should also have a pitching video up to 5 minutes. And if this is a post-production support category, you can include some pitching video materials, especially if you think that this material provides you with an excellent picture on what the final product will look like. You can include that in the pitching, some footage and an application. There is a special button, and you can download and include it for the purposes of pitching video. If it is about the pitching video, well, we also have some instructions as to how such videos should be made. There is no standard requirement for the video in question. It shouldn't be longer than 5 minutes. 5 minutes, that's it, without any seconds. It should be done through Zoom interface, with the slides, with the pictures, with the photos. You can cut kind of model of your film made from the available footage. The quality of this video is not that important. The most important thing is to pitch it successfully for the selection meeting. And you can use that any kind of means that you would like to offer. After the 5-minute video, it should be crystal clear what you are gonna do. It's all in the instructions, mind you. And when you are making the 5-minute video, or just imagine that will be the only thing available for the people. In the 5-minute video, the person reviewing should get the idea and the picture in full. And also the video should be provided with at least with the subtitles. If you speak English, well, you can do that in English. If you don't, do that in Ukrainian and then add subtitles. But by all means, it should be translated or interpreted in some way. Now, what's the algorithm of the conflict of interest check? Mnemonics, PCA, and where to go with the letter, how much time will that take up, Maria? Yes, you have to fill in the Annex form, and that's Annex C, to be exact, the Q&A, and accordingly you can see whether there are any family relations or any business relations with the mnemonics. You have to look it up. Now it refuses to download, but still for all sorts of relations for TCA. And This letter will be added to your application and reviewed together with your application. Again, if you have any conflict of interest with the related to TCA Chemonics, relatives working for TCA Chemonics, that does not mean that we will exclude your application. That will just mean that we make efforts for the relative in question, friend in question, not to be involved in reviewing your particular application. That's the only implication. And if you are acquainted with somebody, Chemonics, especially it is a project. Chemonics is an implemented partner for USAID and Ukraine and other countries.
If you know anyone, especially the relatives of Chemonics, just mention that. It will not influence the results of your application consideration. As Maria said, it will just allow us, as the organizers of the competition, to organize the evaluation of the application in the way so as this conflict of interests would never take place. Whether the grant covers the organization of screenings for discussions. I will tell you more. We even have separate funding for the organization of such discussions beyond the money allocated for the production. So I would say that you can mention that you are planning to do that. And to some extent, you can also mention that it could be additional budget beyond the budget which is necessary for you for the production. And we will find it out further on how to work with that. Maybe Maria would like to make something clear? No, Maria does not want to. Okay. So here we are rather flexible in this question. Now, for many of our current grantees, we are organizing discussion events and allocate even separate budgets for that. As proof of the sole proprietor's ability to perform the declared scope of work, can the signed agreements of intent with subcontractors with whom the sole proprietor already has experience in creating content be used instead of their organizational structure? Maria? Well, let us think on that. In fact, as far as I understand, it is the sole proprietor, but all the work is done with other contractors, right? Well, yes. We have such examples, by the way. We are working and have been working with such sole proprietors. Okay, let us answer this question later, if you don't mind, because we will take all of the questions which were posed during this event. We are noting them down, and then we'll be able to provide you with detailed answers. And they will be published at the website of Detector Media. Let's come back to this question, if you don't mind, later. And let me say instantly, as for our announcement, we have the deadline up to 16th of May to see your questions. Why is it done like that? We are not answering ever personally to anyone, because our policy, if the question came from someone, then all of the participants, all of the applicants have the right to get the answer to this question, because this answer can be relevant for other applicants as well. That is why we are collecting all of the questions, and then we are publishing the answers publicly available. All of the news about the competition of PITCHUA Plus and the answers to your questions will be published at the page of Detector Media, at our page of TCA within the portal Detector Media, so you will be able to read all of the answers to all of the questions which will be sent to us about this competition, about the rules, so any of them. Everybody will get to know the answers to all of the questions. And then we'll have one more Q&A session where we'll announce about it separately. And there we'll collect the most interesting, the most typical questions which were sent by you, and we'll be also we'll be able to answer them in stream mode. And that is why we are never encouraging to haste with your application. There is no difference whether you submit an application today or on the 30th of May. All of the applications will be considered in the totally equal manner. That is why it seems to me that if you wait a bit, then you will be able to think better, read thoroughly the rules, and even read the answers to the questions which we'll publish. Maybe you will want to ask something else during the second Q&A sessions. So please prepare all the materials really thoroughly, but don't be hasty with the submission. It can be done in the second half of May. It seems to me that in this way you'll be able to prepare your application better, as well as other materials which you attach to it. So could you please tell how do you tax the grant of sole proprietor? Maria has already answered, so please, Maria, tell about that. Yes, I've sent the link to the explanation of the tax service. I think that it is necessary that the sole proprietor who got the grant should pay 19.5% of the tax from the grant. We don't know how this statement is substantiated or not, but still we ask you to take that into consideration as the potential risk that you'll need to pay additional for that. So please consult your lawyers so as to find out the answer to this question and to define which legal entity should be used to submit the application. Thank you. So, do I need to provide letters of support from TV channels at the application stage? I don't remember whether we have an opportunity to attach letters as separate documents, but anyway, please mention that you already have the confirmed deals with the TV channel. This is very important because that is first and foremost guarantees that you are providing the project which will not be just put on the shelf, but that there is the interest from the TV channel to broadcast it. And it's the confirmation that you will be able to reach the audience which you mention as the planned audience in your application. That is why it would be really nice if you have already such deals with the TV channels. Even if you write that you have them and they are documented, but you are not able to attach the letter, it itself will be the sufficient confirmation. And anyway, we can request for such a letter separately if we need it. Is it necessary to have a script for the documentary? Yes, for the documentary it is compulsory to have a script, because it is very hard to understand without the script what you allocate your money for. So please watch the workshop of the British producers, documentary filmmakers Paul Copeland and Easy Charman. We have done it, and its recording is posted at our YouTube channel, where they explained that why they were really surprised while working with Ukrainian teams when they found out that we didn't get used to prepare the scripts for the documentaries, whether in the West it is compulsory part for the preparation of the project, especially if you submit it for funding, because the organizations which allocate money need to understand what this money is allocated for. So without the script, it is hard to understand that. Especially if it is at the stage of the production. Because if it's already at the production stage but without a script, there can be lots of questions to such a project. Will it be an advantage if the project already has a confirmed international audience? A pre-sale from an international TV channel. This confirmation shows that the project is broadcast abroad. We are interested, first of all, that the project should have release in Ukraine, because the projects targeted, first of all, for Ukrainian audience should be there. TCA is working with Ukrainian audience, first of all. International distribution is an advantage. It's really good if you mention that. But also mention how the project is distributed in Ukraine, please. Is it enough to attach a literary script to the application for a documentary, or is a director's script also required? Attach the one which you have at the stage. At the current stage. We did not specify on purpose which script should be submitted, so as you could have some freedom. So submit whatever you have. And if you have any question, if we have any questions, we'll ask you to send something more additionally. For an application in the post-production support category, if we have already started working on editing, can we apply? Yes, you can apply. If it is necessary to get additional funding for your post-production, you need to mention that now is the project is at the stage of the beginning of the editing process. And if you mention the timeline in the application when you plan to finalize the project, the only thing I'd like to add that if you are now in the editing process, please pay attention to the fact that we'll announce the winners in the middle or maybe in the beginning of July. So while all of the grant contracts are signed, well, not all of them, of course, obviously the money for each project will not, in fact, depend on other projects, but still signing of the grant contracts agreements will take some time. And the money is paid after the submission of the first milestones, as Maria has told. Every project is then divided in what we call milestones. Those are certain steps. In the end of the step, we have some physical artifact, and you have the payment for each of such physical artifact of some part of the grant. This planning of the payments is taking place when you are preparing the grant agreement. It is done together with the grantee. So you'll have the whole schedule of payment milestones. So it's very important that during the editing project you submit for the additional funding for post-production. But realistically, the money for the first milestone will be given in the middle of autumn, I would say. So please think whether it is not too late for you. But I'm just explaining to you the reality of work with us as for funding. But yes, if you already started post-production, you can submit your application. Is it enough that the video will be available on streaming platforms, YouTube, for example, or does it have to be shown in a cinema or on TV channels? Well, I don't understand which category you're speaking about. If you look through the RFA, and I encourage all of you to read it thoroughly, because it has the answers, in fact, to all of your questions. It is written there that the platforms can be cinemas, TV channels, and also online streaming platforms, and others. We used to support the projects which were shown on YouTube only. It is not banned and prohibited now. But of course, if you submit in the category of post-production, you're creating a feature film which you plan to show at YouTube, there can be lots of questions to you. Because maybe you cannot combine YouTube and the full-length feature film. But still, if you plan to show it at the streaming platforms, and the streaming platforms are already the ones who commissioned this film, yes, you can be broadcast only online. Maybe later it will be shown on the TV channels, but if you prepare a documentary project, it can be just more adjusted to online distribution than the full-length feature film or the TV series with multiple seasons. So yes, the documentary project obviously can be shown, of course, as well, might be shown at the online platforms only. But what's important in this case, you should prove that you will be able to reach bigger audience, and what's interested for us as the organizers, that you involve new audiences, not only the audience which you have at your channel. For instance, you have your own YouTube channel where you publish your products, and you have the permanent audience there which likes everything, and they're happy to see the next project of yours. But it's important for us that you are involving new audience, because for the new audience it is important to change their point of view, because the people who are already at your channel are already the fans of yours. Maybe they like what you do, whatever you do. They don't have anything to debate about because they agree with everything anyway. We'd like you to reach the people who disagree with what you are telling about, so as you could give them certain reason to think on something, to begin a discussion on something. So please be ready to explain how you involve new audiences in case if you plan the distribution of the project on YouTube, or let's assume at the channel which you still fill out with your content. But it is not prohibited by the RFA to issue the project on the online platform only. If there is no footage yet, then the main thing at the pitching is to reveal the idea. Can it be the interview or an edited animation? Oh, it can be anything, in fact, whatever you consider to be the best way possible to reveal the idea of your film. That's what you can do. It could be animation, those could be sketches, you can use other footage materials just to create the model or the sketch. You can also involve AI for that. I don't know what the result will be, but it's not prohibited, by the way. Maybe in your previous works there was something which can also help you show the example how your product will look like, the new product of yours. So you'll be able to use the excerpts of that content which you've already produced before. So any means which you consider to be the best way possible to sell your idea to the selection committee, you can use it as well. Can I submit a project that has not been selected before? Well, if you read the RFA thoroughly, and again, I'd like to encourage you, please read the RFA carefully. It is written that you can submit a project which have been submitted before. If you really submitted this project before and you're submitting it again, please explain instantly in the application what has been changed in comparison with what used to be. How maybe you rethought it maybe changed, adjusted it, maybe you added anything. It's not just the same submitted for the second time. But please explain why you consider that the selection committee should consider this project for the second time. Maybe its relevance has changed in some way. So yes, you can submit such kind of a project, but please pay attention to what I said already, that you need to add some explanation, which would be broader. Do I need to register in the sam.org system? And have a code to receive a grant, Maria? To receive a grant or to submit an application for this competition, you do not need to register in the SAM system, and you don't need to provide a code for us. Thank you. Can I submit two projects from the same team? For example, if we have two projects with high potential, but they are from different studios. Maybe you've been late when we started our presentation. I already said about that in the beginning. We have changed the rules for this iteration of the competition PITCHUA+. If before we used to have the limitation that one company or even one media holding could submit only one application, then now this requirement is easier and is weakened, and every applicant can submit up to 2 applications in each of the categories. So one applicant theoretically can submit 4 applications, but you can get only 1 grant in 1 category. So if you submit 2 projects in the category of post-production, you will not be able to get 2 grants. You will get only 1 grant. If you submit 1 project in the category of post-production and 1 project in the category of documentary projects, then theoretically you can get 2 grants, 1 in each of these 2 categories.
Дайте лінк на ваш YouTube.
Link to the YouTube channel. Well, you should it is there under your comments. The link is there. Just use it. And partners expressing interest, local communities or local governmental bodies, how should this be confirmed with supported with documents? We do not require any letters of support or cover letters. You should just tell us who your partner is, maybe some letters, but basically we're just taking your word for it. Your pitching video and a screenshot, you can mention it, so in any way. Now let me add, there is this question in the form. How you plan to use this content for engaging people in a dialogue, basically? And who is your partner? This is 212. And all the arrangements or understandings that you have, you can mention here. You cannot attach any documents, but we just take your word for it, and we believe you. Afterwards, when we reach the subsequent stages, and then we will perhaps require some supporting material, but at the stage of application, this is enough. Let me tell you again that you should read not just the RFA, but the application form. Examine it carefully. Perhaps you will have some questions when you review the application form, and then you'll be able to formulate the question more precisely, to the point. By the 16th of May, we expect your questions. After that date, we'll have another session, Q&A session, to answer the questions that will be accumulated by that time. And then it will be all in streaming. But anyway, there is the TCA rubric, and there we present everything on our YouTube channels. Just look up all the workshops and master classes. That information can help you getting better ready with the to disseminate your content abroad, because our consultants will help you, especially if you're not part of some big media group. Well, we can help our grantees to get some arrangements about the distribution of your project. I don't see any further questions in the chat box, so we are done, and we've utilized less than 2 hours for that. So we have no further questions. I think that should conclude our kickoff meeting for PITCHUA Post-production and Docs. The best of luck to you. Looking forward to your exciting applications and then the social important content produced. Thank you for joining us. And if any of your colleagues missed this meeting, then we will do that. And there will be the call to Detector Media site. And I would like to thank our colleagues who arranged for the meeting, the interpreters interpreting this event into English, and the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And the American taxpayers to making this possible. Glory be to Ukraine. See you around. Have a